Hello everyone, the topic in this video is returning to self-belonging. If you are going through a stage of life where you don't need many friends, you prefer to have solitude, you have found something strange with your new identity, and people who you used to be so close to have drifted away, this video is for you. There is moment in life that does not announce itself, yet quietly divides everything into before and after. It is not a tragedy, not a celebration, just a subtle awakening. A moment when you begin to feel that something within you has been living in exile too far, too long. You may still be surrounded by people, conversations still happen, laughter still echoes, but somewhere beneath it all there is a quiet dissonance, like a musical note that no longer belongs to the song. You begin to sense that much of what you have called connection was in truth a form of performance. And so, without fully understanding why, you begin to withdraw, not from the world, but from the false versions of yourself you once offered to it. This return to yourself is not an act of rejection, it is an act of remembering. You remember what it feels like to sit in silence without needing to feel it. You remember what it feels like to speak only when your words carry truth. You remember what it feels like to exist without constantly adjusting yourself to be accepted. And in this remembering, something begins to fall away. At first, it is almost imperceptible, a message you no longer feel the urge to respond to, a gathering you quietly decline, a conversation that ends sooner than it used to. But over time, the pattern becomes clear. The more you align with your inner truth, the more certain relationships begin to dissolve. This is the part that confuses many people because we are taught to believe that growth will add to our lives. More love, more connection, more belonging. However, we are rarely told that true growth also involves subtraction. What leaves your life when you return to yourself is not love, it is illusion. Illusion in the form of friendships that were built on convenience rather than understanding. Illusion in the form of kindness that was rooted in superiority rather than respect. Illusion in the form of closeness that depend on you being someone you are not. And your soul knows. Your soul always knows. It knows when a laugh is false. It knows when a yes is not true. It knows when you are being tolerated, managed, or subtly dismissed rather than genuinely seen. For a long time, you may override this knowing. You might silence it with logic, with obligation, with fear. But once you begin to listen, truly listen, there is no returning to ignorance. And that is when separations begins, not dramatic, not hostile, but inevitable. There is something quietly unsettling about certain relationships in life. Some people stay close to you not because they truly care, but because they need you to be broken. They feel most comfortable when you are struggling, uncertain or weighed down by life. In those moments, they come near, offering sympathy, soft words, and what seem like kindness. But beneath that surface, there is often an unspoken satisfaction. They feel stronger, more important, more complete standing next to someone who appears smaller. And then something shifts. One day you begin to heal, you start to smile again, you rediscover joy in simple things, and your spirit becomes lighter. You are no longer searching for someone to hold you up. You are learning to stand on your own. And strangely, this is when those same people begin to change. Their warmth cools, their encouragement fades. In its place, there may be subtle distance, quiet judgment, and even jealousy. They were never attached to your growth, they were attached to your weakness. Because when you no longer need their sympathy, they lose the role they once played in your life. What they offer was not pure compassion, it was in many ways a quiet way of feeding their own ego. There are also those who love to talk endlessly about themselves, their achievements, their opinions, their sense of worth. They seek admiration and validation, often drawing attention to their own importance. But if you look closely, you may sense something else beneath all that noise, a kind of emptiness, a stillness that feels hollow rather than peaceful. People who are truly grounded rarely need to prove themselves. They don't need to fill every silence with self-praise. Their presence speaks more than their words, but those who constantly highlight their own value are sometimes trying to cover a deeper absence within, a space that has not yet been understood or healed. So the question becomes, should you hold on to relationships like this? If you are honest with yourself, the answer is often no, not out of bitterness, but not because you have become cold, but because you have begun to understand your own worth. A meaningful relationship is not built on pity, nor sustained by quiet envy. It is built on mutual respect, sincerity, and a genuine ability to celebrate one another's growth. If someone only stands beside you when you are weak, but feels unsettled when you are strong, they are not truly walking with you. They are simply watching you, and they prefer the version of you that struggles because it makes them feel secure. Holding on to such connections can quietly pull you back into the version of yourself who worked very hard to outgrow. Letting go, then, is not a loss. It is a kind of clearing, a gentle tending of your inner garden. It creates space for relationships that are rooted in truth, where you are not required to shrink to be accepted, nor pretend to be less to make others comfortable. Because a real connection does not ask you to become smaller. It asks you to become fully, unapologetically yourself and grows with you as you do. People who were comfortable with your silence may feel unsettled by your honesty. People who rely on your emotional availability may feel abandoned by your boundaries. People who felt safe in your self-doubt may feel threatened by your clarity, and so they drift. Or sometimes they resist. They may question you, misunderstand you, or even accuse you of changing. And in the way, they are right. You have changed, but not in the way they think. Because even false connections, when repeated over time, begin to feel familiar, and familiarity mistaken for meaning is hard to release. Letting go of these relationships can feel like stepping into a vast empty space. There is less noise, fewer messages, fewer invitations. At times it might feel like a loss. You begin to understand that the deepest form of belonging does not come from being surrounded by many people. It comes from being rooted within yourself. From that place, the relationships that remain or eventually enter your life are different. They are not based on need, but on recognition, not on dependence, but on resonance. They do not ask you to be less, they meet you where you truly are. So if you find yourself losing people as you turn inward, do not rush to fill the space. Do not return to what was merely to avoid the discomfort of what is. This is a sacred transition. You are not being empty, you are being refined. And what falls away was never meant to stay. What remains will no longer need to be forced. And in time, you will come to see the greatest blessing was never how many people you could keep, but how deeply you could return to yourself and have the courage to stay there. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy it. I will talk to you in the next video.